I did my favorite fiction books ever list, and now I'm doing my favorite non-fiction books list ever. This is really a top 10 of just great non-fiction books from a wide range of disciplines, from religion to sociology to history and more. Trust me, this book list is just so great. I love the 10 books on here. I did have an honorable mentions list, but that ended up being 7 books long. So I had to cut it, unfortunately. I might make part two and add those in there. Before I get into my list, please like and subscribe and tell us what your favorite nonfiction is in the comments. And also, guys, this video is sponsored by the Critical Reader newsletter. Sign up for book reviews, book talks, book recommendations, and other stuff. I'll email you once a week, every Wednesday morning. Okay, number one on this list, and I've talked about this book so much. I absolutely adore it. And that is Social Class in the 21st Century by Mike Savage. This is a book talking about the 7 social classes in the UK from a very popular survey that was sent out by the BBC. And people were just obsessed with this survey just to find out what class they belong to. Mike Savage basically, and there's a research paper on this too, and Mike Savage basically goes into more detail in book form, and it is just fantastic and just so eye-opening. I love this because, again, it's always kind of fun to know where you rank in these kind of things as well, which class you're in, and it also just speaks to the nature of society and the differences, seeing the differences between different social classes, knowing what type of salary separates people, what type of education, what type of house you have, if you even have one. So yeah, it was just fantastic. And the thing about just growing up in Britain, like, class is a really, really big thing here. And this really just was able to just open my eyes to just the economic capital, cultural capital, and other forms of capital as well, and how important those things are in determining your place in society. So this is great book. Great book. Number 2 is Austerity, The History of a Dangerous Idea by Mark Blyth. This is one of the most important books I've ever read in my life. I absolutely love this book. I keep saying this line and I'll keep on saying it. As soon as you start paying taxes, you should read this book, because Blyth goes through the 2008 financial crisis and the history of austerity in policy around Europe mainly and America, and the philosophy and where it actually comes from, and why austerity just seems to be the go-to every time something happens. It's austerity, 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 and why it always just seems to be the last policy standing all the time. So yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic book and very accessible, likes the social class in the 21st century. Very accessible book, very easy to read. Mark Blyth is very passionate about this and he argues his point extremely well. And as well, like everything's economic. Everything is economic. The way people are voting right now, the way people are frustrated about things is because of the economy, and getting finessed with austerity measures when you're an ordinary person like me or you is nuts. And it's one of the books that tells you why it's happening and why it shouldn't be happening. So, great book. Number 3, Black and British, A Forgotten History by David Olusoga. I love this book. Love this book. This book spoke to me in just so many ways. This is a very comprehensive history into Black people in Britain, and it stretches back centuries at this point, really. And Olusoga does a great job just documenting the lives of various Black people in Britain, what the society was like for them. And it's always interesting to see how things have changed and how things are very similar. And this book spoke to me. Just the stories of the struggle of what people had to do to survive and all that good stuff is just, it's nuts. It's nuts. This is a much beloved book, and good reason. Number 4 is Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. This book is not for the weak. This book describes how African American black bodies have been, just poked and prodded and abused by the government and the medical establishment in America. This is not for the faint-hearted. It is a very deep book, very troubling book. This is the type of book that have you just shaking your head throughout the whole thing, just realizing how medical practices have been, established to sort of, disregard the black body, to use it to, its own, God, how, what I'm trying to say. You are disposable. You are here for a purpose. You're here for them. If you need to be put into an experiment, a BS experiment at that, and, because they want to see the effects of XYZ drug or whatever, you're up. Your card is going to be called. Your name's going to be called, and yeah, this is a tough one to read for sure. Number 5 is Establishment and How They Get Away with It by Owen Jones. This is one of those eye-opening books. I read this several years ago, and I was in my early 20s, and it really just opened my eyes into how Britain is and just what the establishment does, and the corruption, and how working class people are just getting the short end of the stick every single time when it comes to taxes, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to just making sure society can function. Owen Jones does a fantastic job just portraying just how crazy everything is. I love this book. Number 6, The State of Africa by Martin Meredith. I have a book reviews on most of these. You can check those out. Martin Meredith documents how African countries have been since independence, and we spend a lot of our time in the 20th century. Martin documents how the various governments that have consisted of corruption, brutality, war, just greed, and just it's to the extreme as well. This book was crazy to read about. Again, another book that just has you shaking your head throughout, because the history of colonialism and imperialism are in this book, but also how national and ethnic conflicts and beliefs play a role in the formation of governments in Africa, and how religion also plays a role, particularly in North Africa, in the Islamic states as well. So crazy book, crazy book. I read it last year, and honestly is one of my favorites. Number 7, The Healing of America by T.R. Reid. Reid, I loved this book. I read it a few years ago. Reid, I think he had a shoulder issue, right? And he went around the world to see how different medical establishments and cultures kind of deal with it. So you've got like America with a very capitalist medical system. You got Britain where it's socialized and you don't really have to pay for much, and you got everything in between, right? And so he goes, obviously America, goes to Britain, Germany, Japan, and even goes to like places that have sort of still have the sort of old school herbal medicinal sort of way of going about things. I think he went to India and went to a few doctors that kind of practiced the more healing side of things, as opposed to anything of like a formal medical establishment. Great book. T.R. Reid goes through the history of each country's medical establishments and the culture, and what each country thinks about it, and why it is the way it is. and he's just trying to find a better system for what seems to be a very cutthroat American society. So this is a brilliant book. Number 8, Seen Like a State: How Certain Schemes to Prove the Human Condition Have Failed, by James C. Scott. This was a fantastic political science book. In this book, Scott is basically looking at ideas and ideologies and schemes that have been, that were supposed to deliver something grand, right? He looks at socialism, high modernism. He's seen how certain agricultural techniques are looked down upon, but in certain climates they're needed. And he goes all around the world and he looks at things from, again, the agriculture side of things, from like forestation to farming and, you know, um, town and city planning and all that good stuff, to just even economy planning with the Soviet Union. It's a fantastic book. This is a fantastic book. Just Scott breaks down things so great in this that one of the things I took away is that there needs to be a higher bar for the ideas we think will help humanity. And even if, for example, the example of Tanzania in this book, which actually also I saw in the state of Africa, when the government tried to have like a centralized farming and tried to like, because a lot of the sort of communities in Tanzania are sort of outside the reach of the government. They're not collecting tax revenue on that. They're not really dictating how they live. And so they try to really get those people into sort of centralized farming with a dedicated plot. And that just did not end well. And it turned violent and oppressive as well. Just things like that. It's crazy how even, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. No matter what you're trying to do, no matter what situation you're in, no matter how oppressed you are, no matter what has been done to you, you could still gain your freedom, turn around and be even worse than your oppressor. And that's what this book really highlights. Number 9, Gendercide and Genocide, which is edited by Adam Jones. This is the only anthology on this list. And in this book, I've again raved about this book. This is one of the most important books I've ever read. And in this, we see a multiple disciplinary view on genocide and gendercide. And Adam Jones is wondering why male lives aren't talked about with the same sort of scrutiny and sympathy as women and children are talked about when it comes to genocide, especially when it seems as though they're the ones that are most impacted, especially by numbers, especially by the things that they're forced to do, especially by the fact that if you're going to take over somewhere by force, you need to get rid of the men and the young boys. And this book highlights, even when with certain genocides, with like Rwanda genocide, they just clear out everyone. They clear out, I don't know, when I say everyone, I mean all males. Not just the healthy ones, the fit ones, but they even take out the children, the babies. Everyone that has a penis is gone. And it was crazy when I was reading this to hear about how there was one sort of act of genocide that happened where they took out the males, like the healthy males, but they left the young. But the young ended up growing up, learning their history, and then conquering, right? And fighting back. And then there's another episode where, the oppressors have learned that you can't leave the young boys alive because they will grow up and they will overthrow you. And so hearing, and we get it in this book, reading about how the evil ones are really like smart, and they're learning from mistakes of other people who've committed genocide, but then fallen to younger men who've grown up. Crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah, this is a very important book. Number 10, last in his book, The Reason for God by Timothy Keller. Timothy's a pastor in New York. And in this book, he's just talking about God and why you should believe, and how even in today's day and age, you need to believe, and why it's important to believe, and it's better to believe. This is one of the books that really sort of drew me closer to God, and which was surprising because I'm not the religious type like that. And so I really felt this book, and it really spoke to me. It's been several years since I read it, and it stuck with me. And so yeah, I really appreciate this book for sure. I do need to read a lot more of Timothy Keller's works. I have like quite a few books on my TBR. On your screen is a playlist of other book reviews I have, other bookish content as well. Have a look, you'll definitely like what you find there. There's something for everybody on this channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.